Good evening, please be seated. Well, welcome to the first show debate of 2017 at the Glasgow University Union. It's the popular thing to say that 2016 politically has been a bit of a bad year. So when the Vice President of the Space Medicine Society approached me at the end of 2016 saying, Doug, I want to do a debate about space and settling Mars, I was quite relieved. It's a little bit different where we don't have to talk about Trump or Brexit. So I hope you enjoyed this little taste of change of scenery even, and a different sort of thing to be debating. We've got lots of really smart scientists down here today to discuss these things that are all involved with space and stuff and about settling on Mars. We've also got some less good students that hang around these halls, probably should be spending more time in while they study. They devote their time here. Without further ado, I'd like to invite the first speaker of the proposition, Suraj. He's doing a postgraduate degree in astrophysics. He's done work evaluating the feasibility of a manned mission to Mars in the coming decade in terms of our technological and biological concerns and in the situation of resources on Mars. And is always looking to talk about space and, I'm told, enjoys storing cosmic knowledge bombs. So everyone, a round of applause for Suraj.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the audience and members of our host this evening, Glasgow University Union and the University Space Medicine Society. My name is Suraj Chakyala, and I will present to you, in summary, the evidence and my arguments in support of this motion to send humans to Mars. I've divided my arguments in different sections, namely the technology we possess in this day and age, the in situ resources that are available to us on the Martian soil and the Martian atmosphere, and a final opinion-based section. I'll therefore begin with technology. You will be amazed with the level of mastery humans have achieved in the field of orbital mechanics. NASA's New Horizons mission that was launched in 2006 took 10 long years to reach its destination, Pluto. Now, Pluto is 7.5 billion kilometers away from us. That's roughly 19 times further away from us than Mars is. Now, with these numbers in mind, I'm sure you can agree that it is a testament to human knowledge that New Horizons reached its destination just a few minutes behind predicted arrival times that were made back in 2006 by NASA. Another example of excellent human engineering in the space industry is the Opportunity rover that was launched in 2003 with an intention of a mission duration of 90 days. As of this morning when I checked, it was 4,606 days of operating and marching on the surface of Mars. NASA published a report in late 2014 concluding the normal behavior of a 3D printer in space. Now this has enormous ramifications on our mission to Mars. 3D printers can be used in manufacturing, especially for equipment to produce your oxygen, create storage facilities, build rovers to do science when humans are not available. And the best use of a 3D printer, much like here on Earth, is to build more 3D printers. An array of 3D printers can only improve your productivity and efficiency in that manufacturing. Now, above all existing technology, I believe an absolute game changer is SpaceX's Falcon 9 reusable booster technology. SpaceX has demonstrated and showed that it is possible to launch a given payload into space and bring back those boosters, bring back those engines and land them safely on the ground ready for the next flight. Now the economical implications this has on all space agencies across the world is enormous, especially in an age that is witnessing a downward trend in budget allocations to all space industries by all governments. Compared to the $1.5 billion that it cost NASA for each space shuttle launch, the numbers on savings as a direct result of SpaceX's technology is unprecedented. Now, about the in situ resources on Mars that is available to us, the Martian atmosphere is mainly abundant of carbon dioxide. 96% of the atmosphere is carbon dioxide. We can actually use this to our advantage. We can convert carbon dioxide into oxygen through a reaction known as electrolysis. Another reaction called the Sabatier reaction combines carbon dioxide and hydrogen to create two important byproducts, methane and water. Water for the sustenance of the crew, obviously, but more importantly for agriculture that creates food. Methane as a propellant, as a fuel for your rocketry, for your industrial activities when a civilization is actually established. Another huge resource is the Martian ice cap on the polar regions with this huge glaciers, tons of glaciers of solidified ice water for all your needs. In short, Mars has the resources in plentiful. It is up to us to come up with the most efficient way to extract these resources with minimal waste products. Finally, my concluding section, the points I mentioned thus far have all been technical reasons to why this mission is viable, why this project is feasible in the foreseeable future granted with some assumed risks. However, in my opinion, a far more important reason drives this mission forward, and that is the question why. Why Mars? Why do you want to go to Mars? Why do you want to colonize Mars? Now at this point, I'm really tempted to say why not, because why not? A far more powerful reason exists in the why rather than the why not. I'll begin with the first why. Exploration. Without exploration, none of us would be here right now. It is a scientific certainty that life began in the waters of Earth. If not for that brave multicellular organism that literally took a leap of faith onto uncharted territories, onto new surfaces that is land, and through adaptation, through evolution, and hundreds of other factors that led to us being the dominant species on this planet. But it is important to note that it is exploration that began this set of events. My second why can be found in the testimonials of the Apollo astronauts. Out of the 12 brave men who actually landed on the moon, have had something like this to say in their testimony. And I paraphrase, of course. Apart from the spectacular view you get of the Earth, of your home planet standing on top of the moon, looking at the blue marble, part of the joy in going to the moon, part of the joy in being the Apollo astronaut is actually in coming back down to Earth. In this process of landing back on Earth, you automatically become a representative. You become a symbol to your people. You become a reflection to all accomplishments that mankind has achieved thus far. Now, to give you a perspective of what this achievement is, to give you a perspective on what these astronauts feel when they do missions like this, I want you to imagine the entire age of the universe that cosmologists have precisely calculated using the Hubble's constant as 13.78 billion years old into one cosmic calendar. By that I mean the birth of the universe, the Big Bang, the beginning of everything as January 1st. And today, as of right now, this moment is December 31st. Now, in this time scale of the beginning to now, humans have built the pyramids on December 31st, 11:59 p.m. and 48 seconds. It's been 12 seconds since we built the pyramids and we're already jumping planets in our tin cans. It's an absolutely remarkable feat that we've achieved so much in such short period in time. So in this business of space exploration, in our efforts to explore the cosmos, planet Mars is and has always been the next step in this journey. At the risk of sounding greedy, but in fair excitement, I would love to be around for when a human lands on the surface of Mars in my lifetime. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being my audience tonight. I wish you a great 2017.
He's the former president of the Astronomical Society of Glasgow, attended the International Astronomical Congress in Glasgow as a delegate in 2008, did a project for the ESA in 1995, which was published, relating to a high-resolution imaging to determine exactly what the disputed features of Cydonia, which is a region of Mars, could be. He also enjoys public speaking, and coupled with a passion for astronomy and space science, is pursuing new media productions to inspire the next generation of engineers and scientists. Opening the case for the opposition is Mr. Chris O'Kane.
Ladies and gentlemen of the audience, members of the Chamber, and Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for inviting me here tonight. I have the unworthy position of saying no, and going to Mars has been a dream of mankind for ages. In fact, it's been almost a Victorian desire. Now, it's not the first time that the idea has been brought up, because it was seriously thought about in the 1950s when Dr. Werner von Braun, the rocket engineer, looked at how we could possibly use the equipment we had at that time to send people to Mars. And in the 1960s, once the space race got fully going, NASA did look at a serious study of sending people to Mars, and they got as far as developing some nuclear rocket technology. Unfortunately, the project was cancelled due to cost and other political matters. So it comes down to this. There's the dreams, the desires, and the reality. But what will it cost? Who will pay for it? And what's the reward? Can we afford it? Now, it's a matter of priorities. You'll always get the same arguments, what we should do with the money. Now, I'm very fortunate. I'm 57 years old, but I'm in the same league as you. I'm a child of the space age. I was born in 1959. Space age officially began October 4th, 1957, with the launch of Sputnik. I grew up in the age of space development, and I'm an eyewitness to some of the developments, and I was around when the first moon landing happened. I was in Edinburgh, watching it on a portable television. And it was quite an astonishing feat, and there was no doubt in my mind, and all the mind of my colleagues in class, that we were going to explore space. It was Star Trek time. In fact, the first episode of Star Trek was broadcast 2 weeks before Apollo 11 was launched to the moon. So all this was in the public mind. But there was still dissent even in that time. Most people I knew in Glasgow, the older people, thought it was just the Americans showing off. Now, there was a technological race going on at the time, and it really was a business of a technological contest between the USA and the USSR at that time. The Americans did not want to lose face to the Russians because before President Kennedy made his announcement to send people to the moon within the decade, the Russians had launched the first satellite, the first man, the first woman, the first animal, spacewalk. They were first at almost everything, and America was failing. So the president directed the best capabilities of the nation to this business of sending people to the moon. It really was a momentous undertaking, and it's difficult for people to grasp now what had to be done. It's never been done before, and it hasn't been done since. Now, what happened? Okay, interestingly enough, they got to the moon, the public got bored. As far as the public were concerned, there was nothing on the moon but rocks and dust. And by December 1972, the last people who were on the moon left it, came back, and we never went back.
You're saying that the public got bored when man going to the moon. Surely that's because it's not new. Our side proposes that we go to Mars, something new and exciting that will encapsulate the imagination of a new generation.
Yes, it would be you for 3 days. The reality was that the Americans made the decision to stop going to the moon 2 weeks before they got there. And Congress decided they would not build any more Saturn V launch rockets before Apollo 12 got into orbit around Apollo 8 rather got into orbit around the moon. So it was a political decision, and the reasons for going. In a nutshell, America went to the moon out of fear. Fear of loss of face to the Russians. And they stopped going to the moon because they were fighting a war and trying to keep social unrest down. A war in Vietnam. They couldn't do both. Couldn't fight wars, keep social unrest down, and go to the moon. Most of the public were against it by that time too. Now, going to Mars will be very expensive. It's much further away, it's going to take longer, there's going to have to be a lot of infrastructure to support whoever goes. And whatever it costs, it will always be more. If they say 100 billion, it will probably be 200 billion, possibly 300 billion. Now, colonising Mars is going to be an ongoing cost. If you go there and come back, fine, but if you want people to stay there, it's going to have to be continuous supply. Now, the money could be spent on Earth. There's no doubt about it. You'll hear this argument. I hear it as a member of the Astronomical Society. I hear it from the public. Why should we spend so much money on space? After all, what is there on Mars? There's rocks, dust, gas and ice. We're lucky, there's some running water, and we're very fortunate we might find a few microbes. I'm afraid that's not a compelling enough reason for the public. Now, if it's totally private money, fair enough, and people are prepared to spend their money to go to Mars, let them do so. Man must explore, but at what cost? Now, we're doing a very good job with robots at the moment. One of the things that surprised me in my lifetime was how clever robots can be. The first probes to the moon, to Mars, to Venus, were big plunking pieces of machinery, and they weren't entirely successful. But now we're doing a good job with robots. So we could send robots. Another thing, as far as space medicine is concerned, I've heard it said by one of the experts, that we don't know enough about the effects on the human body of long duration spaceflight. We've only been to the moon for a maximum of 3 days in a 1/6 gravity environment. Mars at 1/3 gravity, you're going to have to be there for at least 6 months. We just don't know enough. It's safer to send robots. Then it's a massive cost. It's a massive effort. It's a massive risk to life. And the public will need a compelling reason to support it. That's my issue. They didn't support the moon programme. Now, when it comes to it, the money could be spent on Earth. Solving problems with famine, with water shortage, with disease. There are far more effective things we can do on Earth. So when it comes to colonising Mars, it's another issue. Mars is a common heritage of mankind, so say the United Nations and the Outer Space Treaty. You can't own it. You can't exploit it. And whoever goes there is going to have to discuss this with the United Nations. It's ours. However, when it comes to the choice between Mars and Earth, I'm with Dorothy and Toto. There's no place like this.
And now for the second speaker of the proposition. He has a master's in human and applied physiology and has published 7 papers in the field of space physiology, mainly in basic life support in microgravity, and is involved in teaching of space physiology at King's College London. The second speaker for the proposition is Dr. Lucas Renberg.
Evening. It's my great pleasure to speak to all of you this evening for the proposition put forward to the House. As I said, I'm a medic and scientist by trade, but I've got a great love of space exploration. I think I've been into that evening. So currently, space agencies are in a phase of maturation since the end of the space race. We've turned inwards, focusing on low Earth orbit missions, and turning satellites on ourselves and looking at some priorities here, coastal erosion, glacial melting, and other priorities. There's also been a swing towards letting private companies and the private sector take some of the burden of space flight at the moment, as touched upon, Virgin Galactic, the Falcon. All these companies are helping sort of the financial burden, but not only that, they're aiding in innovation of space exploration. They're looking at ways of making it more effective, safer, more efficient, hopefully adding innovation to the whole sector and getting us not only into the Earth orbit, but beyond as well. So this is all good and well, but it's, to me, it's a step back. It's a negative approach almost. Yes, priority should always be, sort of, safety should always be our priority. The safety of our astronauts, current and future, should be our priority. But by taking a step back, we're not, not quite like that fire under our bellies. We're not sort of galvanising ourselves. By setting up high standards, you push people to find solutions to the problems that are coming up and inspires innovation. And it's this that we need. By sort of setting this goal, will then inspire space agencies to come up with solutions to all these problems. In my mind, I'll summarise it into 4 main points, and I think it's touched on already. Often the financial argument is brought up time and again when you come to space agencies, and particularly now, we're thinking about going back to the moon and to Mars. And you begin thinking that maybe spending vast sums, we're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars on an industry where, as I said, there's more earthly priorities. There's humanitarian crises, there's poverty, there's, I mentioned erosion, there's so many things that could be solved here with this budget. And the public seem to think this a lot, and also sort of elected officials think that we should allocate sort of these budgets elsewhere. But this is quite a narrow point of view, I think, anyway. It's not really considering the broader benefits that we've seen over the last 3 or 4 decades. NASA published a report shortly after the end of the space race, and it's a figure that's sort of often going in circles, that for every dollar spent on the space race, there was on average a $7 return, sort of in this technology-driven gain, sort of an 18-year period afterwards. And that was just sort of in the States. There was also some similar benefit in the USSR at the time. Even though we're not seeing similar gains nowadays, the space sector is still pretty massive, $350 billion worldwide, and that's been growing despite times of austerity, sort of an average 4 to 5% in the last sort of 7 or 8 years, and it's looking to continue to grow. So whenever they say that it costs so much, yes, it costs a lot of money, but in terms of the jobs that it creates, the downstream benefits, the manufacturing, the industry that it creates, there's a huge economic and financial benefit to this. Next point I'll make is collaboration. There's something, I'm not a politician, I don't know sort of the ins and outs of political rivalries worldwide, but there's something about space that sort of, supersedes, it rises above all these sort of minor sort of rivalries. One example would be in 1988, there was an earthquake in Armenia. The local infrastructure was demolished, there was no transport, there was no healthcare, tens of thousands of people displaced, death toll was rising, and it was actually the US and the Russian space agencies that came together. They used their network of satellite communication to help the relief. So they helped implement infrastructure and disaster management. And from this lasted for many years, and the lessons we've learned from that, which is sort of referred to the space bridge to Armenia, we've learned a huge amount in terms of telemedicine, disaster management. And so these are the benefits that we've taken not only into space, but massive benefits back here on Earth as well. And I think the political sort of ties from that continue to today. It's seen in the International Space Station. You've got the collaboration of all these countries that have come together since its launch in 1998. This is something that's required to global cooperation, coordination, global funding. As I said, this has cost hundreds of billions of dollars over the last 20 years. But as a result of this cooperation, you have this collaboration, and you have this community that's now become a global community. And again, as I said, it's just rised above it because everything we do is important.
Okay, just because we seem to be alone doesn't mean we always are. So long as we don't know that we're the only species in the universe, why do you believe that the universe belongs to us and all the planets should be our property?
There's a debate that we're going to later on. You've got the Drake equation, you've got the Fermi paradox. We can debate long and hard about whether there's life out there, but I suppose until we put a flag in, I don't think we're claiming a right to it. I think we're stretching our legs as a species almost. We're just seeing if we can get there. And I think, I'll come on to it later, but I think by exploring, we're pushing ourselves as a species. Someone else may turn out to own Mars, but I think by pushing ourselves, we'll develop the capabilities of taking ourselves not only to Mars, but the rest of our solar system and beyond. Right. My next was a scientific argument, and I think there's a lovely quote. So there's a letter written by a nun in Africa, Sister Jacunda, to the then Associate Director, Stirlinger, in 1917. And in his response to why we shouldn't spend more money on poverty and urban priorities, he responded, amongst other things, significant progress in solutions of technical problems is frequently made not by a direct approach, but by first setting goals of high challenge, which offers a strong motivation for innovative work, which fires imagination and spurs men to extend their best efforts, which acts as a catalyst by including chains of other reactions. And I believe, in terms of the scientific argument, that summarizes it perfectly. There's biology, chemistry, physics, engineering, all these benefits that we will get from setting this goal of landing on Mars. I shall skip to the very end then. My last argument is the emotional, or the inspirational. To me, there is a childhood-like wonder when you look at a shuttle launch, when you look at pictures from the Hubble, from the ISS, when you think about how many people he's inspired, and Tim Peake is a perfect example of this, of his outreach work and inspiring children. I honestly believe that going to Mars galvanises the nation, and it will influx the educational pipeline and inspire the next generation of engineers, mathematicians, physicists, but also inspire the next generation of astronauts that will take us to Mars and beyond.
Now, to continue the case of the opposition and to close the top half speaker has a bachelor's in strength and conditioning science, a master's in human anatomy, a master's in human and applied physiology, did a research project on the effect of additional axial loading in the European Space Agency's skin suit on posture and respiratory function, and is currently a PhD researcher in orthopedic and trauma medicine at the University of Edinburgh, researching and looking at the characterising the knee functions in the elderly and optimising function of unstable knee replacements, and is also the Pint of Science event coordinator in Edinburgh. The next speaker for the opposition is Alex Segal.
Today I am here to speak against the motion of going to Mars. Undeniably, we are in a very exciting time for space exploration. However, much research is yet to be done on the prospect of sending a successful human mission to Mars within the foreseeable future. Undisputably, the most important factor within science and exploration is the safety and security of the individuals involved, not just during the exploration, but before and after the mission as well. Each stage of the interplanetary mission poses its own risks, and at present, we do not know if it is possible to mitigate against each of these ones to protect human life. The first issue we have is physically getting people to Mars. We are physically very capable of sending people into space, and we have been demonstrating this for decades. The survival of astronauts and their health has been improving steadily in recent years. However, it is well known that exposure to microgravity causes vast health implications on the astronauts that are harmful to their health. These include, but are not limited to, various systems in the human body that are essential for function anywhere, including the skeletal system, the muscular system, immune system, to name but a few. It is known that these deteriorations will worsen over time, and if we are sending people to Mars on a minimum 2-year round trip, some of these effects might not be recoverable. A further pertinent issue to consider in regards to health is the effect of cosmic radiation. Now when we send people to space, on board the International Space Station, which orbits the Earth at approximately 400-kilometer altitude, they're still protected by the Earth's magnetic shield. But interplanetary missions, so 225 billion or a million kilometers away from Earth, would not offer the same sort of protection. So one thing that we have to consider here is being able to protect the astronauts from radiation in terms of their craft, and if we actually manage to get them there, their Martian habitat. But at present, not really possible, largely due to the size of the technology that we have, as the materials that we have that are used as a radiation shield, their weight, and thus financial implication of actually sending these materials into space. These things are very, very expensive. And as my colleague mentioned earlier, can this money not be spent on better things here at home? The next challenge, of course, is landing people safely on Mars.
Okay. So, on the thing of money could be spent...
Sorry.
So, on the question of could the money be better spent on Earth, that's just a reason to never fund space agencies at all. Are you advocating your side of the house that we abolish all the research into space and everyone isn't giving food to starve?
Well, if you'd let me continue, I might, pose a counter argument to that. I'm personally, just to address your issue personally, I'm not saying that we abolish all space exploration, but I think it is pertinent to weigh up the risks and benefits. So, continuing, the challenge to land people on Mars is a great one. There have been many craft and probes that have been sent to the red planet, but these missions have been notoriously poor in their success. Currently, there are still 2 rovers in operation, if my sources are correct, but if the most recent, supposedly latest technology is anything to go by with the most recent probe to Mars, risking human spaceflight to the red planet is beyond the question because of issues like crashing. Notwithstanding, should we successfully manage to send people to Mars, they must stay there mission worthwhile. I think you would agree. There would be no point sending them there just to turn around and come home. But this poses the issue of being able to grow and produce your own supplies of food, water, and other essentials. Currently, there are positive leaps being made into the production of food to sustain life on Mars, but very few crops have actually shown promising results in simulated Martian conditions. So further research is still required on the sustainability of life on Mars. And understandably, at present, the first few missions to Mars would only be scoping missions, as our technology doesn't allow us to colonize the planet outright. So, upon return to Earth, the rampant deconditioning of the various bodily systems would have far-reaching consequences on the astronauts' health. Right now, we know that even on a 6-month mission to the International Space Station, health is not preserved, and it takes up to 18 months, if not longer, to recover from the catastrophic health benefits. In some cases, such as bone health, that is never recoverable in some astronauts. How much worse would it be, I ask you, if we send people for more than 2 years into the microgravity environment? The extent of the side effects are as yet unknown, but it's not unreasonable to expect that they would far exceed those seen in astronauts returning from missions to the ISS today. So these are just a few of the reasons why I believe we should not be sending people to Mars at this time. Perhaps in the future this will be possible, but my point is, at this time, it is not feasible to send humans to Mars. Further reasons that have been touched on, but I won't go into detail on, are again the financial cost. You can flag that up as much as you like. I'm sure it will be. General healthcare implications. Just basic life support of people on a day-to-day basis. If things go wrong, performing life-saving surgery in microgravity. And worst case scenario, if astronauts need to be evacuated. These are all issues that are highly worthy of considering when putting human lives on the line. As long as humankind has been exploring new frontiers, there has been a loss of life. But as we said before, nothing ventured, nothing gained. Surely, however, it is our responsibility to preserve life as much as we can and give the guys who do pioneer these expeditions the best possible chance. As the Red Hot Chili Peppers say, Space Indian is the final frontier, but it's currently made in the Hollywood basement. And that is where we are right now. The balance between risk and reward is what makes the prospect of space colonization so lucrative. However, right now we do not have the means to safely take people, send them to Mars, land them there, allow them to survive, and to return. Perhaps one day, with further research in future generations, our children and our children's children may be able to colonize the Red Planet, but right now the risks are far too great. Thank you.
Closing the top half of this debate. The third speaker and opening speaker of the bottom half of this debate is currently studying an integrated master's in physics and astrophysics, and is an up-and-coming young whippersnapper debating at the Glasgow University Union. Yes, he's smiling, he looks so. And he also has a sharp look for interesting suits. I'd like to Owen Campton to open the bottom half of this debate.
Mr. Chair, esteemed experts, speakers, and distinguished strangers in the gallery, we do not do this because it is easy, but because it is hard. The words that united a nation towards one goal, putting man on the moon. So today I bring to you a thought of hope, that we may go towards Mars, not because it's cool, but because it's our species' directive. We are creatures of discovery and intrigue. We are not the pompous elite who wear robes everywhere. We are not a people satisfied by staying within our means. We are destined to leave this planet, to explore strange new worlds, to go to the cold, unforgiving void of space, the final frontier, to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no one has gone before. This side of the house are the intrepid travellers who want to take us all forward, to make another great leap for mankind. The other side of the house will either argue that we shouldn't focus towards one aspect of research, but a plethora, or that we shouldn't even be spending this much money when there are humanitarian crises here on Earth. You see, having a wide range of research with multiple unlinked goals is actually a massive waste of resources. With funding spread thin across many areas, a lot of these research projects won't have the finances that will enable us to make those big scientific discoveries that a lot of us around this table and around this room would want to see. And also, the thing is, it puts then a strain on the taxpayers' money and, in general, the public's interest in science. And if we can't deliver on people's want for excitement, we lose investment in research, and then nobody here wins. People got bored of Man on the Moon, not because it wasn't scientifically astonishing, but it wasn't new. The science was being done up there was not feasible to the minds of humans down here. So research needs to be tantalizing and understandable by the average Joe, like our chair Doug here, in order for the public to get behind it. And setting on Mars is exactly the kind of understandable goal that produces the excitement that we need. Science is the great unifier. Regardless of creed, background, or religion, it brings us together. And it's with the public's backing that we have unity, allowing us to go forward at a much faster rate. It was only 8 years between JFK's speech to Congress about going to the moon and the day that man walked it. A truly giant leap in what is just a blink of the eye. All because the US was united behind this goal. It presents great opportunities for international cooperation, creating closer links between countries that would have once been at each other's throats. True, the Apollo missions did sprout from the Cold War, but the space race nearly crushed the USSR. So Russia and America would both be foolish to think that either of their space agencies could go it alone. So when the countries are getting along, benefits flow. Closer links means more trade and jobs created within space industry, meaning economic growth, a more content public, meaning less conflict and more money for investment in research. This doesn't happen on the other side. Research in a wide range of projects means superpowers can pick and choose which research projects to invest in, and you'll not see completely international collaboration. Unlike CERN and LIGO, which do have international links, things like NASA are branches of government, leading to political ties between governments, which are much, much stronger. Now the question on humanitarian issues. The opposition may argue we shouldn't invest such high-brow projects when there are things like famine, poverty, and war around the world. But this is actually the reason that we must invest big. Consider the international cooperation that I said. This will produce peace, reducing civil conflict and civil war. But past that, think about the technological advances that we'll be seeing. We'll be seeing technology that will allow us to take heavier and heavier substances across the galaxy. We'll be seeing ways to transport water, either from the Martian poles to settlements, or from here on Earth through traveling. We will need to find a way in order to farm the desert planet of Mars. These technological advances will be used here at home. If you're able to farm in a desert planet like Mars, you'll be able to farm in areas that are very susceptible to famine. These families will be able to feed themselves. They'll have the excess crops to be able to sell. These families will then have money to send their children to college and schools. And these children can then grow up and live outside their means. I'll take Beth.
All of this relies on governments being willing to convert those results into helping individuals at home. President Trump thinks that climate change is caused by the Chinese. What possible evidence do you have to show that any superpower with the kind of money to do this will be willing to invest that kind of money in converting it to human benefit?
The hope that we have had throughout history. We have had the moon landing, which has produced the hope of a generation to go and travel space. We have had the gravitational waves experiment, which has produced hope for more and more research into the area. People are hopeful for this. This is why people will get behind them. You see, the technologies will then help people across the globe solving humanitarian issues. So why can't the other side offer better? Well, they stick to the status quo, that we should invest in charity to solve problems around the world, that we shouldn't risk it. But this hasn't worked to date, so we must step out and try something new, because with risk comes reward. If you knew you had a chance of doing something new and amazing, wouldn't you? If it was to benefit the world? We shouldn't focus on trying to just tape up the cracks of this world, but we should actually try to transcend it. We have a moral duty to go where no man has gone before, not because it's cool, because we think and need to explore for the good of humanity. Mars is not the end point, but a new chapter. It is a point for a more stable humanity, for further exploration. From there we could mine the asteroid belt, look for life on Europa. From there we step out. So when we say propose, we are saying that it is time to continue once more to make that giant leap for mankind. So please, propose.
The next speaker on behalf of the opposition, currently studying a bachelor's in chemistry at the University of Glasgow, and has insisted I inform you that she once won a second place in a regional science competition once. In terms of debating, she was the maester of the Dialectic Society, so was elected on her ferocity and willingness to impact violence against those who don't listen to what she says. That C that transmits through to her speech. I introduce the chamber, Ms. Aileen de Souza.
So what I'm going to do what no other speaker around this table has done yet, right? And I will tell you why this is principally wrong and unethical. But firstly, I will give you an accurate characterization of what this actually looks like in our world. And I think most importantly, actually, I will make up for what Owen does in rhetoric in actual points. I'm going to basically talk about what effects this would have on Mars, what effects this would have on the Earth. And I would hope to instill the doubt in your minds, right, as to why Mars in particular should be the subject of our attention. So what is the actual goal of space agencies, right? So that the goal of space agencies is space exploration with a view to gain knowledge and to gain an understanding of our universe. Like, to go where no man has gone before is accurate, right? But who is actually likely to do this? What specific space agencies are likely to invest in this kind of thing? You see that currently there's only about 6 space agencies in the world that have the capacity for soft landing, out of which I would say America, India, and Japan are the most likely to be enticed by this kind of idea of colonizing Mars. But even these space agencies do not have the financial capacity to colonize Mars. And what does this actually mean insofar as how we approach colonizing Mars? It means that we will actually need buy-in from a private, public kind of investment thing, right? And this means that we now have an added stakeholder who has an incentive, right, to want something out of what we will be doing. And what this means as well is that currently there are laws that bind space agencies and governments to not do certain things. For example, it is illegal to go near bodies of water in Mars that we know exist because there's suspicion that life could exist. However, right, private investors, for example, people like Elon Musk, who are very keen on going to Mars, literally do not care about the ethics of going to space. But furthermore, right, what this means is there's a market incentive now on space agencies who will receive buy-in, inevitably, from private investors to completely ignore ethics. There's for example, if it was to be done by a private investor who is technically not NASA, but kind of is, and say they were to contaminate Mars, this would be not really something that NASA could be prosecuted for. So let's be honest actually about the real reasons why people want to go to Mars. It's not because we want to explore, as in actually specifically settling, right? It's not because we want to explore Mars, but it's more because we have this idea that the Earth is doomed. And you know what, you're right, it's a ticking time bomb. But when we go to Mars, we are there specifically to try to exploit the planet and to get as much of it as we can, right? And because these private investors don't care about ethics as much as we do, they are more likely to do things that are exploitative. So then, like, what does this mean for us, right? This means that, like, there's no real reason why, So why is this? It is because currently, like, even with the capacities that we would have, and even if we were to, somehow make perfect things, we are not able to contain, like, have a self-containing system. And, like, furthermore, we can sterilize the rovers that we send to Mars, but there is no way that I know of to sterilize a human being. What this means is that when we send humans to Mars, inevitably some of our microbes will enter their system and contaminate Mars. This is actually completely contrary to anything that, like, a space exploration agency would want to do, right? Because this actually destroys the noble claims that we have, and it could give us, say, false positives for life on Mars, where we might find, like, colonies of E. coli or tardigrades. And this means that we are actually, like, behaving in a way that is principally unethical. Now, what effects, right, would this have on Mars? Firstly, I've mentioned how people will want to exploit their resources, and then furthermore, the destruction of the ecosphere in Mars itself, right, which we still don't understand. But even worse, what would happen on Earth? When rich people see it as an option that we should go to Mars, right, they will, like, firstly, they will do this, and this means that people on Earth will be disenfranchised because they will feel left behind. Inevitably, if I know that I have enough money to basically leave the Earth, that is basically doomed. We all know that, like, climate change is a massive problem that we have right now, and literally, I think the only reason why rich people are incentivized, right, to invest in, like, preventing climate change is because climate change will affect everybody in the same way. It is one of those things, like death, right, that affects every single person. That is why currently, like, people like Richard Branson are incentivized to spend money on preventing climate change. Owen?
The thing is that we're going to have technological advances that allow us to live on Mars. We're going to need renewable energy like solar panels and wind turbines. This technology will be used then much more at home, reducing the impact of environmental things like global warming.
Okay, so say I believe you, right? You still give me no reason why specifically we should pick Mars over literally any other thing. Like, let me give you a few examples. Why don't we try space flights? Why don't we try settle on near-Earth objects, which we know definitely don't have microbes, or have no capacity to hold life, right? Presumably the technology that will allow us to live on Mars would also allow us to colonize, say, the Sahara Desert or the deep sea. The problem is, right, that Mars has, like, the capacity to hold life, and that we would probably be like, so we like to think of ourselves as, like, the most intelligent species, right, the best species. But then we must also be prepared to act as guardians of the universe, and, like, at least protect our own solar system. We don't want to be looked on as barbarians by the other alien species that we will inevitably encounter. because that would, like, simply not be right.
And now, the final speaker on behalf of the proposition, to the best of my knowledge, has no background in actual natural sciences whatsoever. However, is a European University Debating Championships quarter-finalist and has just returned from the Netherlands, ranking 12th in the world and reaching the semi-finals of the World University Debating Championships, Mr. Oudmouli.
Honourable members of the House and distinguished guests, I think I can nobly speak for the common man in this debate when I say we've had enough of experts. Space medicine, rocket science, simple questions such as, is this possible, or will this kill some people? Some of these are all completely irrelevant. I think as an economist, I'm uniquely qualified to deal with the two most important issues in this debate, which are of equal importance. Number one is money, number two is the extinction of the human race. told that this might be dangerous, that maybe a few astronauts will die. I point out, look, there is a space medicine society that exists with some members of the panel. And unless the Space Medicine Society has decided to copy GUU Debates and is nothing more than an elaborate excuse to embezzle money and send the convener on trips to see his girlfriend at Worlds, then I'm going to assume that they are at least doing some space medicine, and that this space medicine might be able to cure the space diseases that we get. There we go, that's analysis. So, next we're told that if aliens exist tonight, this might be bad. Bethany POIs in the accusation of space racism. I mean, if it is true that there are aliens exist, that they live on Mars, that they might be pissed off by us, I want to get them before they get us. The only basis we have to go on is humans as an intelligent species, who every time we meet humans who are different from us, we tend to kill them all and take their land. I would like to do that to the Martians before they're able to get to us. Then we're told, aha, no, the rich will escape. The rich will escape and leave us all behind on Earth to dodge climate change. Look, I saw Elysium just the other day, and if it is true that the rich do try and leave Earth to deal with climate change, then Matt Damon will put on a weird spacesuit and save us all by killing the evil government, which is inexplicably only guarded by 3 racist South Africans. Then we're told that we should instead be spending all of this money on Earth. I mean, I point out you can say this to literally anything. Like, you can say it to here. I spent $2.50 on a pint of beer. That is money that could have gone to save valuable human lives. You could literally, like, sell the GUU, sell all our clothes, destroy everything, and just live in tents, like impoverished and, like, starving, until we've saved every last human life possible. Like, I think this debate is taking place in a world in which we accept that space agencies do exist and that they should do some things involved with space. That's why they're called space agencies rather than international aid agencies. I mean, I just think humans are more than just machines that are designed to eat shit and procreate children. And if there is some purpose in our existence, then we should push the boundaries of existence by exploring other planets. So, number 1, money. Look, any good that NASA does is ultimately contingent on a planet being able to get funding. And like most of the good stuff NASA does is actually like not obviously connected to space. So like a lot of the stuff to do with climate change, like gathering data on things like glacier shrinkage and things like composition of the atmosphere, like all of this sort of useful stuff that we need to be able to do to combat this climate change. The problem is this is massively under threat at the moment, because we have a White House which is filled with climate change deniers, we have a Republican-controlled Senate and Congress filled with people who want to defund any agency that's remotely connected with climate change, and all of NASA's budget is going to be under threat going forward. So look, even if it is not possible that we get to Mars, I think that's probably better. I think it's better if it takes us literally decades, because this is a way to guarantee NASA's funding for years going forward. There's several reasons for this. Look, first of all, competition with other countries. Like, yes, I accept the moon race was literally just America dick-waving with the Russians. I think that's a good thing, that we decide to spend the next 20 years dick-waving with the Russians and the Chinese and the Indians and the Europeans. So I mean, ultimately, all of these organizations are spending more money focused on this sort of useful research. Secondly, this will appeal to the electorates. The electorate really, really like cool things. Like, people hate boring, sensible things. People hate things like, you know, staying in the EU so we have jobs and money and all Thirdly, this will uniquely appeal to the egos of politicians, because look, this is the only time that any politician will ever say this, but they all want to be Richard Nixon. They all want to be the politician who can stand forward and say, I was the President of the United States who finally put men on Mars, who made history, who pushed the boundaries, who will be remembered in thousands of years. There's like also the sense of massive accomplishment and narrative of history. Like, I think it is just true that we are more willing to spend money on things, or spend time and effort on things, when you think it's important, when you think it's pushing your species forward, because that's just sort of like the sort of thing that we do. Lastly, on the thing about private companies. Look, if you accept private companies are bad, they're much more likely to take under the status quo, where at the moment everyone's like, well, why do we need NASA at all? Why can't Virgin Galactic just do all of it? It's only when we're doing projects like this, which only NASA can do, which only space agencies can do, because only they have the requisite amount of money. Like, Virgin Galactic can never be as rich as the United States government. So it's only when we're doing this that we're able to force private space agencies out of the market that we're able to replace them. Secondly, the extinction of the human race. So, the concept here is called in economics the black swan effect. It's basically where humans discount events that are extremely unlikely, even those events are extremely bad. So the problem that exists is this. We all live currently on one planet. Unfortunately, this is a planet that's quite good for life, but unfortunately every 50 million years or so, everything on it dies. Because we get things like asteroids, we get things like massive volcanic explosions that crowd out the atmosphere and make it impossible to grow food. We have things like solar flares that bring in massive radiation, strip through the atmosphere, and kill all the beings. Like, there's a reason there's fossils everywhere, it's because every so often everyone fucking dies. We're not immune to this sort of thing, and as long as we remain on one planet, we're incredibly vulnerable to just a random accident that could literally happen right now. Right now, no. Obviously it's not going to happen as I say it, but like, it could happen at any moment is my point. And the point is, we need at some point to be able to deal with this somehow. So at some point in the future, we are definitely going to go extinct. Like literally the Earth will definitely be hit by an asteroid at some point. So at some point, we do need to go to Mars or we need to go to some other planets in order to be able to solve this. I think the reason we should do this now is, one, like if an asteroid does hit, just now, then that means we're probably more likely to avoid this. But it also means, like insofar as it's going to be difficult, insofar as it's going to be dangerous, I'd like to be starting to deal with those problems as soon as possible. I'd like to start being able to deal with gain the expertise, gain the knowledge, gain the requisite science thing, all in order to be able to do this. Because I think ultimately, like, when you're weighing up sort of like harms or benefits, even though there's only like a 0.0001% chance that an asteroid will hit us tomorrow, given that the harm, which is the extinction of the human race, is literally infinite, we should weigh that very heavily, and that should be a thing that we care about. So I think for all these reasons, ultimately, we should go to Mars. Proposed.
That fine speech. And before we move on, I'd just like to notify that after this final speech, there is a question and answer session where you can, from the gallery, ask questions to our speakers, and we'll go on to that later. And then there will be a vote for the team that you think won the debate overall. But before that, I'd like to introduce the final speaker for opposition and the final speaker in this debate. Once again, I have no idea whether they have any sort of professional or academic background in science past, I don't know, like GCSE or A-levels. However, is a European University Debating Championships quarterfinalist, broke 12th in the entire world at the World University Debating Championships, and then reached the semi-final with the speaker we just heard. I'd like to introduce the president of the Dialectic Society, Ms. Bethany Young.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, honourable members of the House, guests and friends. Frankly, I think the question to solve in the bottom half of the table is not whether or not we can reach Mars, because all these people are trying to figure it out and I can't figure it out and I don't know if they can, so we'll let them figure it out. But whether or not we should go to Mars. From closing, we tell you why we think it's principally wrong, why it refuses to solve problems on Earth, why it teaches dangerous lessons and divides our planet. First of all, rebuttal to Owen and what we think space agencies should do. First of all, space agencies should figure out how to convert their discoveries into helping people on the Earth. That's how they should spend their money. Second of all, they should do the kinds of things that private companies aren't doing already. Why do private companies want to go settle Mars? Because they're vanity projects of the crazy super rich, right? That's why they want to go do dumb shit like settle Mars, whereas space agencies are concerned with the fabric of our universe, or what's inside asteroids, or how far we can send things into space. Then we're told by Owen that we definitely need to do this in order to avoid asteroids hitting the planet. So if he's seen Elysium, I've seen Armageddon, right? Mars to fight asteroids, we can send Bruce Willis and Ben Affleck, and everything will be fine, right? So he also tells us that this will guarantee the funding of space agencies. First of all, I think the incoming trade war with China is going to have some serious problems for everyone's funding, regardless of whether or not we're able to guarantee it in the long term. So, why do we think this is wrong? So first of all, as I already said, Mars is not our planet and doesn't become it just because we put our flag in it and claim that it is. It should not become the property of those who make it there first. And when we send people to Mars and settle them there, they will have escaped the responsibilities of Earth, but will be parasites on our resources, right? It's already difficult to maintain life outside our planet for short periods of time. I think settling Mars will be the kind of drain on resources where we constantly have to send the resources to maintain life, but they don't contribute anything to maintaining life on Earth. This is a signal from space agencies and from government that Earth is an intellectual and physical dead end. The Prime Minister says that we need to explore, as if we somehow already know everything about our own planet. Explore this planet and benefit the humans who live here. Explore the deep sea or the science of the brain, the climate science we are engaged in a life and death struggle with. It's, I think, something we are more committed to exploring than whether or not the rocks on Mars are red or dark red, right? I think first of all that Earth will become less innovative if we settle Mars. The proposition tells us to keep our eyes skyward, but when we send the signal that the goal is to leave Earth, that we should aim to become one of the privileged few who can flee, I think we abandon problem solving here. We think less seriously about how we can help Earth and how we can make things better here. Why solve problems on Earth when we can dream of a magical future utopia on another planet and being sent to Mars? My argument is not just financial, that we should not spend money on this, but that the will to improve our own planet and the millions of people that will remain here will disappear, replaced with a will to leave. First of all, I think this abandons our responsibility to our planet, to its animals, and to its ecosystem, because without significant human effort, our planet will die. It will wither and die underneath us. And it will be because of a disease caused and maintained and spread by our own selfishness. And the proposition proposes that we flee the scene of the crime, that we leave millions of animals, that we leave millions of species to die on this planet while we go and consume another. The first Owen tells us that maybe we get some tangential benefits for being willing to explore Mars. But first of all, I think this reduces our will significantly to convert any of those discoveries or any of those benefits to improve life on Earth when we're committed to evacuating the human race, as Owen says, and instead committed to leaving behind the ecosystems that we have already destroyed and not putting our efforts towards solving them. Even if we are careful, we will irrevocably contaminate and change the atmosphere and planet of Mars. The government benches tell us about the inspiration value of space agencies, about how they can teach us important lessons. What a dangerous lesson to inspire in the next generation of space agents, that irrevocably changing another landscape without knowledge of its consequences is the correct response to issues on Earth. Our exploration of the universe should seek to cause as little damage as possible, to preserve the universe exactly as we find it. And thank you. That's the lesson we should inspire in our planet, in Earthlings, that our impact on our and other planets should be as minimal as possible. If we are to explore, let us do it without claiming planets as our own, without detracting from our own exploration of our own planet. Second, Owen.
Okay, look, saving the planet is really boring and no one cares. Fuck polar bears. Look, if it is true that we're just going to turn up on Mars and wreck it, that's fine, we'll move on to another planet. There's a whole universe of planets.
Frankly, I think if we can't have this one, we shouldn't have another one. The space race has never united humanity, no matter how much Owen tries to claim it has. But it has always set countries against one another as they scramble for the prestige and resources of space. This will not be some new utopia without the same problems of Earth, but will transplant the same conflicts between countries to Mars. I mean, I think Trump's inevitable war with China will be a lot worse in space. I've seen Star Wars. People will die in that. They get blown up. I'm pretty sure we should just keep our wars to Earth. I think that would be much, much better. Frankly, I think if we're not able to be responsible with the own planet that we have, if we're not able to work towards solving our problems here on this Earth, I do not think that transplanting sections of the population to Mars, where they believe they are no longer responsible to Earth, where they don't have to suffer the same indignities of a dying planet, means I think we have less individuals working towards saving the planet that we have tried to kill. I think it means that we have less will to solve those problems, regardless of whether we have the financial capability to do so. And frankly, I think we need every single iota of human will to solve climate change. The problems are so massive, so inescapable, that even the slight changes, even small changes of claiming that Mars or fleeing to another planet would be beneficial, I think we should avoid that, because every single one of us has an immediate duty, not just to ourselves, not just to others around us, but to millions of future generations and the hundreds of millions of thousands of species that we will make extinct because of our own selfishness, because of our own claim to own the universe, to own the galaxy, to own this Earth, which I think is irrevocably abhorrent. We should claim to not be owners of Earth, but to be those who seek to preserve it, just as we preserve the rest of the galaxy and should seek to do as little harm as possible to other planets around us. This will irrevocably change Mars in ways we have no way of understanding. And frankly, I think hundreds of thousands of years ago, when our descendants look at the planets we have destroyed, they will think that the moment we sought to colonize Mars marks the point where humanity thought they could consume planets end on end on end until we reach whatever end we might reach and finally let our species go extinct. Thank God.
The witness speak from the proposition that swearing is not allowed in this chamber and the requisite punishment will be issued later on this evening. Before we move on to the vote from the gallery to decide who has won this debate, are there any questions from the floor that they'd like to ask either the four students mingling down there or the experts at the upper end of this table about this issue specifically, please? Yes, Dr. Peacock.
Well, thank you for what I think was an absolutely fantastic debate. Very interesting the comparisons with the moon landings, because as has been suggested at the time, in the plans for the moon landings, one of the big differences is between prioritising the moon landing as opposed to prioritising a sustainable moon system. And a lot of the things that are initially planned in NASA in the 60s for a sustainable moon system that Werner von Braun has in mind are abandoned by the political pressures in order to get to the moon as quickly as possible. So I'd be very interested to know what the vote in the debate think about the idea of prioritising Mars as let's sort of get there, as opposed to prioritising Mars as in let's take our time, let's make a system in terms of spaceflight that is sustainable and is actually going to lead to something that is worthwhile in that regard. And
do any of the speakers have anything in particular to say about that? Yes?
The space race of the 60s taught us a lot, and we're still using that technology today. You've got to remember when Kennedy told them to go to the moon, America had only achieved 2 suborbital flights, and they didn't even know if it was possible to go to the moon. So the development of upper stage, the second stage of Saturn V was a liquid oxygen, liquid hydrogen rocket, and the first liquid oxygen hydrogen rocket to be fired on the ground was the very first space shuttle launch. So we learned a lot from it, and we still use that technology today. So by doing it very quickly, we learn fast. And unfortunately, the political will wasn't there to continue doing it. But that knowledge is not lost because the people who worked on these things are still around, and they can tell us what we did. And we still have drawings. We lost a lot of skills. You know, some of the skills they used to build Saturn V rocket no longer exist. Some of the people who worked on the project are gone. But we do have an archive that helps us discover what they did. And we are using that technology today. So it wasn't lost. It wasn't wasted.
Thank you, Mr. King. Do you have something to say more? No, you can say it.
Being a medic, so if I was taking the point of view, for the proposition, but if you take it from a medical point of view, from the doctor's point of view, from the ethics side, I very much agree with Alex's arguments that there are, I don't know, patient safety is the bread and butter of my day-to-day work, and if you're a flight surgeon, your priority is the safety of the astronauts. You know, currently, I think we have technology to get someone to Mars on a one-way trip, but I don't know, ethically, you know, as a species, we couldn't really do that. And again, as Alex pointed out, there's so many obstacles at the moment in terms of the deconditioning of the human body. We could get people there, but we could almost guarantee that the astronauts who get there, if we set them today, would not be functional. You know, there's a plethora of things. You know, they must be too weak. They couldn't control their own blood pressure. There'd be a dangerous level of radiation, and yet, at the moment, there's no real solution. If there was a solar flare while we're in transit, you know, the crew could be wiped out. And there's other ethical issues of evacuations, getting people back. So purely from, I don't know, from a medical point of view, from an ethical point of view, at the moment, sending people there without sort of, I don't know, suitable countermeasures to make sure that they can get there safely and back, I don't think we're quite ready. So I agree partly with your point that I don't know, maybe maturing a little bit longer to make sure we can get them there safely, not just, you know, getting Elon Musk and Branson to help us out to get there and back as quick as we can. I think it's probably safer to get astronauts there and back safely.
Are there any more questions? Let's take a look. I've got some, obviously, from where the days are sitting. There. Okay, I'll go for Sky Brethel.
Given that upon leaving the EU, us as a country, we would experience significant cuts to scientific funding. This is a question for the government. Why do you think the funding that we have left at the end of this, why do you think it's right to prioritise colonising Mars rather than, say, medical research or other scientific ventures here, helping people, whereas at first, colonising Mars would predominantly affect the very rich?
Anyone on the government would answer that specifically?
Well, I'm not even... Oh,
So, like, presumably, like, even if we leave the EU, it's likely that, like, the people who participate in the European Space Agency in Britain will likely stay with them. even then, things that go towards space budgets are usually like decided as is, and it's not really something that like will change drastically in time. As in, like, for example, even if you're saying let's prioritize Mars, and you went to say what's the parliament in Britain? Westminster. They wouldn't be like, yes, we're going to give you an extra 10% over what you have. So it's very likely that that would stay stable.
Okay. Are there any more questions from the gallery? Okay. Yes.
So SpaceX can land rockets now. This will hopefully, probably pretty soon go into space instead of costing millions or billions, make it as trivial as flying a plane to a different country. Because now instead of throwing away the plane, you can reuse it to fly back and forwards. Are there any other significant advancements that we can make it so it's way easier or cheaper to go to Mars than any other fields? So just need more cash behind them.
So the question was, currently SpaceX has developed rockets. SpaceX is a private space exploration company. They've developed rockets that can go up in space, and instead of just being thrown into the great mass, they can come back and be landed down and then reused at a later date. And the question was, are there any other sorts of, and that saves a lot of money, and the question was, are there any more technological advancements that space agencies can use in order to cut down on these costs? Does anyone on either side have a question or something they want to respond to that? Yes, go ahead.
So I guess another way that you can do this is launch fuel tanks already beforehand and put them in orbit. So that reduces the amount of weight you have to launch with the crew as well. That reduces risk as well. But another thing is that when you are in orbit, for you to get to that fuel tank and refuel and go is actually very risky. But it is our only proposition right now, and it's the only advancement. If you want to see many years into the future, there are always things like the different engines you can use. You can have particle, anti-particle, collision, energy, thrusting engines. This might be like in the next 20 years, in the next 50 years, we don't know. But there's always technology that is available for us to research and advance ourselves to go to other planets.
From a physics standpoint, would it be possible to say launch a fuel tank on an electric plane to get to orbit and then have the rocket? Would it be possible to say launch a fuel tank on an electric plane into orbit, land the plane back, and that rocket would pick up?
Yes, that is our proposition right now by SpaceX actually.
So just in case anyone didn't hear, one of the solutions is getting planes up in the air to the high point of the Earth's stratosphere, and then putting the fuel tanks into space to save money on the fuel that you need to put into space, and then you connect somewhere in space, and then you go off and do all this cool stuff we've been talking about today. Are there any more questions from the gallery? Yes?
I have one for the opposition. Much of the debate has been about the idea of terraformation of Mars, which is turning Mars into Earth, rather than colonization, which could actually be defined as, say, a permanent settlement of astronauts. What are your thoughts on the colonization of Mars in that sense?
So for those that didn't hear, the question was, much of the debate had been about the terraformation of Mars, which is turning Mars into a sort of like livable space, turning it more like Earth. And the question was, how do you feel about instead of just simple colonization, like astronauts exist there? Am I correct? Is that?
Yeah, in that sense, they contribute. We're
And
not just sending people off.
Okay, does anyone have anything to say? I'll take, because you've given one already, Mr. O'Kane.
So when I've read about this, one of the major complaints about it is similar to complaints we have about our own orbits currently, in which we put satellites in orbit, and when those satellites stop working, we leave them up there. So it's the same thing that if we have a long-term colonization of Mars, where we're using resources that are put up, that are sent from Earth. So you have to be generating your own oxygen, your own food. All of this would have to be coming from Earth, as opposed to figuring out how to farm Mars. That's even we're just polluting Mars essentially, just leaving our stuff, and when we finish using it, whatever fuel tanks we're using or whatever oxygen tanks we're using, we just have to leave it there because there's no way of sending it back without it costing enormous resources. So the reading I've done about it is about how this would basically be even more consuming the planet, and that we eventually run out of places to, if we stayed there for hundreds of years, we'd eventually run out of places to put all the stuff we throw in there.
Okay, yes?
Okay, so just to give you some perspective, humans exist in a film. We don't exist in a sphere. There's only a certain area that humans can actually survive in naturally, and that's reasonably within 10 kilometers from sea level up and, well, not really under sea level without the aid of things like scuba gears. or snorkels, or very, very long snorkels if you want to go deeper. So reasonably we could, well, it's been said that 96% of Mars's atmosphere is carbon dioxide, which can be then turned into oxygen. It is still pertinent that humans need oxygen to survive. So yes, in order for us to go and survive on Mars, we do have to turn it into an Earth-like planet. In terms of sustaining life further, in terms of growing food, Mars' soil is filled with all sorts of nasty chemicals that currently don't allow the production of food in crops as we know them today. Perhaps with scientific advancements we may find edible food that can grow in a Martian habitat, that can grow in Martian soil. But we know that plants here on Earth need nitrates to survive. It's a very nitrate-poor soil that currently exists on Mars. They can have all the sunlight they want, they can have all the water they want, they have all the carbon dioxide that they bloody want. I mean, the vast majority of the atmosphere, most of the things are there, but without that one missing link, for plants to grow, we can then not offer humans to actually just go and farm Mars. Humans can only exist in a very tiny film. And even just regards to our own temperature, our body temperature and my body function, 3 degrees above or 3 degrees below 37 degrees Celsius, and I will stop functioning. We will all stop functioning. We exist in a very small spectrum of temperature, of life, of everything. It would be very difficult to just go and use Mars as it is.
Okay, so generally the answer there was that humans are feeble and therefore we need to turn make it respectively better because there's a lack of things on Mars that we can actually use. Is that right? Okay, are there any more questions? Because I'm going to start wrapping things up now. I will take... Yeah, go ahead.
Of course. When you're considering all the learning and technological advancements, why would it be a better technological advancement to send people there rather than continue exploring with robots? And why would we spend more risking losing information about are we the only ones who are alive? There's about TV and Mars and stuff. I think it's really a risk in that information. Are we gain that much more technological advancement by sending people?
So the question, just in case anyone didn't hear, was, is there much point in sending humans when we could just send robots there in the first place? And then also attached to that was the idea that we send humans, we might possibly put at risk the microbes that might exist on Mars and put all that information at risk. Is that roughly the gist? Okay, does anyone on either side want to answer that?
I think,
Well, just a few points. Well, I think sending people there to... Our rovers have done a great job and they're doing a great bit of engineering today. I'm not sure if you guys want to, Bill Nye, the science guy, he's sort of head of the Planetary Society as well, and he made a very good point recently that if we send people there, we could explore thousands, tens of thousands of times faster, even if we don't end up colonising Mars or staying there. We could go there, explore, experiment, survey vast areas, and so much more quickly and efficiently than any of our best rovers or technology today. That's just one of the benefits of going there. And as we've touched on, the technology that will develop when we go there, off the top of my head, you think of improved lab support systems, improved filtering, recycling systems, 3D printing, telesurgery. These are also predictable sort of innovations that will come. You can think of artificial gravity, centrifuge machines on a spaceship going there. These are all predictable or logical steps in terms of building a craft that will get us to Mars. So again, as I touched on, I think if we set that goal, it will then push us to create those innovations. If we continue to send slightly improved rovers each time to Mars to get a few more answers from a different crater, I feel like we're sort of taking baby steps when we could and find out so much more, so much quicker, and get so many more benefits at the same time.
Okay. If you're desperate, yes, go ahead.
In response to that, to say, yes, we can send robots that become very smart, and they're getting better all the time. And you don't need to feed them water them, and they don't become ill. Sometimes they do. But it's not a great loss if you lose a robot, send another one. Now, when it comes to sending people to Mars, my view is that we will not send people to Mars unless there is a compelling reason to do so. Unless we find something on Mars that demands a human presence.
Okay, thank you very much. The last question will be given by Mr. Graham Cowie, and then we'll wrap up and head towards the vote.
Given the predominant concerns we have colonies and capitalism in the past, articulated in part by the opposition today. Are the government not concerned that Mars might become a tax haven?
Those that didn't hear, the question was, will you be concerned that Mars will become a tax haven in its
Like, I mean, if we do get to the stage where Mars is literally a nice enough place that billionaires will move and live there so they can avoid paying a bit of tax, then I think we've probably done a good enough job of settling this.
With that, we're going to close the question and answer session. So, now we're going to head to the vote. This will be an oral vote, as in the side that makes the most noise in favour by the proposition or opposition is the one that is going to win, based off the fact that the team that makes the most noise, I will suppose, will be the most number of people in the gallery who agree with that team. So, to be very clear, what I'll say is, okay, all those who believe that space agencies should prioritise settling on Mars, those in favour say aye, and if you agree, give it the yelling, say aye, smack the side of the wood if you want to. And then all those against, nay, do the same thing, give it belly if you really believe that. Crucially, on the speeches that you've heard this evening. Is everybody clear? Good. Right. Moving forward then. So, the question before the House is that, do you believe that space agencies should prioritise settling on Mars? All those in favour, say aye. All those against, nay. I think the ayes have it. Before I lose your attention, I'd like to quickly do some plugging, as is my job realistically in the grand scheme of things. Next Monday, there will be a show debate up in the McIntyre building, which is the SRC headquarters just up the road at the top of the hill in front of the main building. We will be most likely be discussing the rectorship of Edward Snowden and whether or not that was a good or bad thing, and it will be between the four student bodies, the Glasgow University Union, the SRC, GUU and the Queen Margaret Union. And if you're interested in learning some of the skills and getting involved in debating, speaker training begins in earnest again next Tuesday here at the Glasgow University Union, 6 p.m. in the Briding Library, which is just across the corridor. Thank you very much for coming. And there is also a Facebook page. If you type in GUU speaker training, you come in there and the information will be on there. And there's an announcement from the Vice President of the Space Medicine Society.
Just quickly, can I thank everyone so much for the fantastic turnout? It's been wonderful, and everyone for a fantastic debate. One of the other many also bizarre societies, eclectic societies I've recently been involved in a desperate attempt to pad out my CV with less debating things and more medicine things, is a society called Aid for Rwandan Medics, and currently they're doing a laptop drive. So if you got a new laptop over Christmas and were planning on selling your old one, a Rwandan medical student could write their dissertation on it if you were kind enough to give it away. This is an amazing organisation. This makes the difference between students being able to complete degrees and having to drop out because they can't afford to continue to study. It is an absolutely fantastic opportunity to help out. And we are doing the drive up at the Wolfson Medical School building. So if you have a spare laptop, an old rickety thing lying around, meet me in the bar afterwards where I will definitely be so we can arrange to pick it up. Thank you so much.